My name is Mujtaba Mohammed, proudly serving in the North Carolina Senate, representing Senate District 38, which goes from the Northeast University area almost down to the airport, covering Uptown, Noda, Dilworth, South End. That is our new legislative map because we got new maps. So beginning January 2021, if the good people of Senate District 38 decide to send me back in November, that is a new part of the Senate District 30 that I'll be representing. Currently, the district goes from northeast to west Charlotte. So that's the Senate district.
Awesome. And we want to thank you so much for taking the time today. I know that there's a lot going on. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to LGBTQ MeckDems. And so we really just want to start with, obviously, there's a lot of financial questions for people. So we were just hoping to first talk about unemployment insurance. Who's eligible under expansion, who's not, and what do people do if they have issues with the website? Because even on mine, I've seen it's going down a lot.
So obviously this is a critical issue. A lot of folks are out of jobs right now. I believe the latest numbers are that over 300,000 people as of today have reached out to apply for unemployment insurance. It's unfortunate with the situation with COVID-19, but this is why we have to have a people first agenda to make sure we put the good people of North Carolina and fellow Americans across the country who are struggling. As you know, a lot of service workers are out of work right now. So first of all, I got to begin by thanking our Governor Bill Cooper, for his tremendous leadership, how he's been steering the ship. He thankfully issued an executive order issuing a state of emergency back in early March when we first started discovering that this was happening. Since then, one of his first acts was an executive order to make it easier for folks to seek unemployment. And a lot of that stuff has been rapidly changing. I was just going to read some of the details of that executive order so the listeners and the viewers know what's happening. So currently, as far as Governor Cooper's executive order, it removes the 1-week waiting period for folks if they need to apply for unemployment compensation. It removes the requirement that you go out and look for work. We obviously want people to stay home. The lives of many, many Americans and North Carolinians is at risk. So that's why we have a stay-at-home order across the state. That's why Mecklenburg County was the leader in this, when we were the first county to ask for the stay-at-home order as well, because we want to save as many lives as possible. I will tell you, as of this phone call with you guys, our latest numbers are 10 dead. Unfortunately, 10 people have passed away from COVID-19 across North Carolina. I believe we've got over 1,600 people who have been found positive. There's still a number of tests happening, but Governor Cooper's unemployment executive order is going to help make it a little easier by, again, removing that barrier where you got to actually get out there and seek employment during this emergency. It also helps protect employers so that they won't be charged back and be responsible when employees are seeking unemployment compensation. And one of the best things is that you can actually apply for unemployment online. Oftentimes, folks are required to meet in person to apply for that type of benefit, but they can go online to the Department of Employment Security's website. That's des.nc.gov. So anybody can go over there to apply for those unemployment benefits. And I will tell you, unfortunately, since 2013, because of the Republican leadership, our unemployment system has been terribly gutted. We have some of the lowest numbers of support as far as support for North Carolinians. We have a sliding scale in North Carolina for a lot of folks, just so they can understand. And basically, the number of weeks that's covered for unemployment depends on our unemployment rate. So right now, that is covering up to 12 weeks of unemployment, unfortunately. A number of other states are up to 26 weeks. We're also at the bottom when it comes to how much we decide to compensate North Carolinians for unemployment. The average weekly allowance for unemployment in North Carolina is $277. The max is $350. The average median for across the country is $500 a week, and up to 26 weeks. So you can see clearly North Carolina is by far lacking. So thankfully, we're so thankful for the bipartisan legislation that Congress and President Trump did sign into law. So just so folks know, and I'm going to go over this because a lot of this information has been coming quickly. Obviously, folks might know that over 3 different bills were passed federally to support Americans across the country. So one of them is the CARES Act, which basically provides an additional $600 a week in unemployment assistance to North Carolinians. And again, North Carolina provides up to 12 weeks, maximum 20. Again, that's a sliding scale based on our unemployment. And those numbers are obviously going to go up. But once those have been exhausted, basically individuals can get almost 39 weeks of unemployment under the federal legislation. So you'd be able to get $600 a week in addition to whatever you're eligible in the state. So not everybody necessarily gets $350. It just depends on your pay scale. You asked earlier about the issues with the websites. Unfortunately, there are issues with the websites. I myself have been trying to reach so many folks in DES to get assistance for our constituents. They are slammed right now, as you can imagine. I just told you, before this pandemic happened, we had about just under 4,000 a week applying for unemployment assistance every single week. So we're up to 300,000. So you can just imagine the capacity. But Governor Cooper announced yesterday in one of his latest executive orders that the department is getting updated new servers, and they have also contracted out to a call center to assist with the high volume of calls. So I would urge people to continue, go online, go to des.nc.gov. Make sure you apply if you need that assistance. It's there for you. We've got to put people first. Don't bear this hardship alone. It's there for a reason. And a lot of employers should urge their employees to get that assistance as well, so they don't have to worry about the chargeback. So hopefully when this pandemic goes away, God willing, folks can get back to work.
Awesome. Thank you for that information. And I know it is changing every single day that we get new information about the pandemic and unemployment insurance and benefits. One of the things I wanted to kind of ask about too and follow up on, there are people who don't qualify for unemployment in North Carolina. Are there any specific bills or things that you're supporting moving forward or types of assistance that they would qualify for?
So this is what I will tell you. So yes, you're right. So generally, the self-employed or your average Uber driver, or if somebody's got their own small business or an entrepreneur, they would not be eligible for unemployment compensation. That's generally because they don't have a history of making payments into the system, and that is why we generally do not allow the self-employed, the folks with their own gigs out there, to seek that compensation. But thankfully, as part of the federal legislation, they did pass and I just got an update from the General Assembly on this today. It's called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA, which provides unemployment compensation for individuals not otherwise eligible for regular unemployment insurance. This would also allow them to get that up to $600 a week in assistance. That is basically being run by the Department of Employment Security. Basically, the federal assistance is being run through the states. So the states are currently waiting on guidance. I just got an email from the Department of Commerce, which runs the Employment Security division, and they basically sent us some information and guidance, and they wanted individuals to know that they are waiting on that federal guidance and on the program to figure out how to provide that assistance. So folks that have maybe applied earlier in March due to COVID-19 and might have been denied payment, they need to just hang tight, continue to look at the website and reapply, because you may be eligible for that federal assistance. Again, that is 100% paid by the federal government for our gigs, our small businesses, our self-employed individuals.
Awesome. I think Cameron Joyce had a little bit to add there too.
Yeah, Cameron.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you for your time. And as you know, my name is Cameron Joyce. I'm the vice president of the organization, for anybody that's watching. But I had a question. First, I had a statement. I really appreciate the work that everyone at the NCGLA is doing. I did get some information today for people who have had issues with the contact center. So I know people that have called for weeks, haven't been able to get through. There's currently a form that they can fill out on des.nc.gov/customer-contact-form, and that'll help get your questions or concerns into the DES so they can call you back. But sir, I have a question. So part of my concern with the contacting DES through the internet would be for people who don't have access to the internet. So what would you suggest to people who may have relatives or people who don't have internet access? They now cannot go to a physical location, and the telephone lines are kind of bogged down at the time. What would we encourage them to do?
So what I would tell you is, again, right now, generally we apply for unemployment, like I mentioned earlier, through in person. So thankfully, Governor Cooper's executive order has eased that burden on so many North Carolinians. So utilize the internet if you can. If you don't have access to that, please contact them via phone. I can also share that information. Their customer call center, I believe, is 1-888-737-0259. But again, they have a high call volume. But Governor Cooper announced yesterday with his latest executive order, which basically eased the burden on so many North Carolinians with restrictions on utilities and evictions. He mentioned in there that they have contracted with a call center, which will hopefully begin to ease that. But again, I would urge folks to be patient. I know it's not easy. It's not easy to do, especially when you've got bills to pay. But thankfully, I will tell you, companies like Duke Energy, our Piedmont Natural Gas, cable companies, a whole host of organizations that you generally work with as far as your day-to-day living are working with you. I know a lot of different mortgages and banks are beginning to work with folks. COVID-19 is having a rippling effect across the country. So hopefully you can get some time from those creditors, those folks that you owe money to continue to support your family. And then hopefully the state and the federal government can come in and assist you as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And so sort of dovetailing off that, so talking about people on unemployment, and also, of course, now moving into insurance and access to medical care during this time. Obviously, North Carolina did not opt in to Medicaid expansion because of our Republican legislature. And so those people are caught without health insurance to begin with, and then we have people moving to unemployment. Are there any specific policies or bills that you're hoping get passed in the upcoming General Assembly, or any movement you're seeing at the state level to help catch those people in the midst of a medical crisis?
So again, Cameron, like I told you, we've got to put people first, and that's what I've been trying to do my entire career as a public interest attorney, and even now as one of your state senators in Mecklenburg County. I will tell the folks that are listening, back in January 2019, Medicaid expansion was the first piece of legislation that myself and so many Senate Democrats and House Democrats filed to make sure we expanded Medicaid. A lot of folks might not know, but 90% of the cost for Medicaid expansion is already paid by the federal government. And we've also already worked with hospitals to figure out how to pick up that last remaining 10% tab. Right now, North Carolinians need to know that when you pay your federal taxes, your tax dollars are going to states like Ohio, New York, California to make sure those folks get access to healthcare. But unfortunately, we've decided to play politics in North Carolina with people's healthcare. Because there are folks out there who are hell-bent on destroying the Affordable Care Act and President Obama's legacy with expanding access to healthcare. They are refusing to expand North Carolina still as we speak. I was one of the senators who voted not to adjourn when we did in January for the special session when we were called back. Many folks might know that we still don't have a state budget. And one of the biggest points is Medicaid expansion, along with that teacher pay, funding for Department of Environmental Quality. There's a whole host of things that are an issue, but obviously Medicaid expansion is an issue. In North Carolina, we could cover almost 500,000 people with this money that is being spent to other states. So when I tell you 300,000 people are unemployed, a lot of those people are now out of their health insurance benefits, unfortunately. That's just a sad fact. Which tells you, again, we've got to be able to do more. But the federal legislation that was just passed, I will tell you, I believe, again, we just got an update on it from legislative staff today. So I can't give you the complete details, but I believe the update was that the federal legislation will allow states to pick up, the federal government will pick up 100% of COVID-19 issues, any medical responses related to COVID-19 for individuals. Now, that requires legislative action. So that means we've got to get back in the Senate, we've got to get back in the House to pass that piece of legislation to allow our state Medicaid agencies to take that federal aid so we can make sure we get folks covered. That's where we're at right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know that you'll be very busy once y'all get back in session, trying to get those things passed for the people. We wanted, we also wanted to ask a few things specific to the LGBTQ plus community. Obviously, one of the things with stay-at-home orders is that not everyone is at a home that is affirming or necessarily safe for them, especially LGBTQ youth. We also have a higher rate of homelessness. Do you know of any action on the county or, of course, at the state level to help, number one, help homeless people in general, but also for LGBTQ youth who may be homeless?
Well, Cameron, this is what I will tell you. I mean, this is the type of stuff that keeps me awake at night. Because the reality is, while many of us get to hang out and catch up on our next Netflix television shows, binge watch or eat, and just hang out with our friends and family, our family, whoever you're living with, your roommate, what have you, there are a lot of folks who are living with abusers out there. Folks, whether it's child sexual abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's not being accepted for who you are. By living amongst your family, and that is a serious struggle that we're dealing with. I've seen the consequences of that as a children's rights attorney when I started out my legal career at the Council for Children's Rights. Working as a public interest attorney is what's motivated me to get involved in public office. So our vulnerable population is something that keeps me awake at night. And this is the type of stuff we're absolutely going to need resources for, because when this pandemic ends, there are going to be a lot of people who dealt with all sorts of trauma when they were staying at home. To stay alive, unfortunately. And it's something that we're going to have to absolutely deal with. The schools, I know, are aware of this. I've spoken to some of our school board members locally. They're aware of this issue. I've sponsored legislation myself to increase schools counselors and school psychologists. Right now, our school psychologist ratio is 1 to 2,100 students. It makes no sense. It's totally out of whack. Safe, but we've got to make sure we have budgets that reflect our values so we can have that support system in our classrooms, in our schools, and in our community to make sure we begin to put people first. So that is the type of legislation that I'm going to continue to push forward in the short session. When it comes to, I believe, the homeless population, I know that Mecklenburg County is working with a lot of different shelters and different hotels to keep people inside, because our hotels are struggling because people aren't traveling. So I believe the county, is my understanding, that I've heard from one of the county commissioners meetings, is that the county is working with different hotels in the city as well to contract with them to make sure that our homeless population has a place to stay as we're dealing with this pandemic. We're doing our best to keep folks updated on social media, but I would urge people to visit the county website for Mecklenburg County Commission and the City Council to get those local resources out to the community.
Awesome, absolutely. And again, we thank you for your leadership and continuing to support not only LGBTQ issues, but obviously for the good of the people who are marginalized in our communities. One other thing we want to ask about are about LGBTQ plus people and protections for them. Obviously, we are very familiar with the idea of non-discrimination in Mecklenburg County. And moving forward, even as this unemployment rate is increasing, LGBTQ plus people may still be fired for being who they are, for their orientation or their gender identity. And so what things do you support moving forward as we hopefully will come past this, but also during the pandemic?
Look, we've got to always make sure that our state, our county, and our city is always welcoming to all people, regardless of their faith, regardless of who they love, regardless of their gender identity, or what have you. We should always be welcoming, and our diversity is always going to be our greatest strength. And that should show in the pieces of legislation that we pass. I'm very proud of the city of Charlotte. It's always been a forward-thinking city. And I'm hoping we can get past the nightmare of House Bill 2 that was here a couple of years ago. During the slash session, I myself and a number of other legislators, we did, again, refile a bill to repeal House Bill 2. We've got to allow our local governments to do what local governments do, and they see best fit. And that is to be able to pass a non-discrimination ordinance. That's just good government. I mean, Raleigh doesn't know what's best for Charlotte all the time. And I tell my Republican friends all the time, you guys are all about local government and having small government. Why are we dictating small governments about how to live their, how to serve their constituents or the types of needs that they might have? So it makes no sense to me sometimes, the type of pieces of legislation that they pass. But look, we're working hard on that front. The other thing I will tell you is, I know you mentioned one of the questions you've had is unfortunately the passing of Monica Diamond in Charlotte was brutally murdered, unfortunately. It's sad. It's a toxic situation in the world that we continue to live in. I am a proud sponsor of the Hate Crime Prevention Act during my first legislative session. Unfortunately, Republicans still have it in committee. There are folks out there that don't believe that hate crimes are a real thing. The Hate Crime Prevention Act does include Section 1, would finally expand protections to the LGBTQ community. It then expands protections based on sexual orientation, gender identity, ethnicity, a whole host of things. But the biggest thing I always say about when it comes to hate crimes is because we've had people of different faiths attacked. I mean, the 3 young Muslim Americans that were brutally murdered in their own apartment in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And unfortunately, the media and law enforcement at the time called it a parking dispute, their lives. Finally, the DA, when that individual was finally convicted, did come out and say that it was a hate crime. But we've got to do a bit more to strengthen our hate crimes laws in North Carolina, because we've got to send a strong message that hate is not welcome here, and we're going to do everything to protect our most vulnerable community. And that's why I'm a proud sponsor of the Hate Crime Prevention Act. The biggest thing about that bill that I want people to know is that you cannot understand the level of danger that people face every single day unless you track that type of data. Right now, in the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting System, we have a voluntary program where law enforcement can voluntarily provide that data to the FBI. Our bill, which was joined by Senator Valerie Foushee and Senator Jay Chaudhry from Wayne County, basically requires the State Bureau of Investigations to make sure that we maintain a hate crime data and use that data to make sure we provide law enforcement the resources that they need to protect our most vulnerable, so we can provide the training and resources to our prosecutors so they can prosecute these individuals who choose to attack somebody based on hate, that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But again, it's about putting people first. That's why real lives are at stake, whether it's not protecting folks by expanding the Hate Crime Prevention Act, whether it's not making sure we're protecting lives by expanding Medicaid. This is what it comes down to. And I'm not trying to get partisan here, especially during this particular time, but your policymakers have a real impact on your day-to-day life. Right now, the North Carolina Senate, we are 4 seats away from taking the majority. We need the lieutenant governor's seat. We need 4 more seats to take the majority. The House needs 6 more seats. And we can do that in 2020. And I know while folks are sitting at home, if you got a little bit of time, if you can pull away from Netflix or whatever hobby you have found, or if you're playing YouTube, whatever you're trying to do, take some time, figure out some great candidates that you can support across our great state, and start making phone calls for them. Those are simple things that you can do to make sure you change the trajectory of the state for the next decade.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss too if I didn't remind people that today is also National Census Day. So to make sure that you fill that out at 2020census.gov. Every community in our state needs to be represented, especially those who traditionally have been undercounted and undervalued. That's not just the LGBTQ plus community. That is people of different faiths, people of different colors, people of different backgrounds. So make sure that you fill that out today. It takes 10 minutes, 2020census.gov. And also, talking about people getting engaged and involved, if you have a North Carolina issued driver's license or ID, the DMV announced yesterday that you can start doing voter registration fully online. So other ways to make it easier for you to get involved and to make sure that we're all counted. I wanted to give Cameron, Joyce, or Mason, if either of you had any additional questions for the senator. I know there were a couple others that we may have talked about. Yeah, Mason, go ahead.
Senator,
Hey, Mason.
thank you. Hello, thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do. I was wondering if you had any specific suggestions for what people can do to help their neighbors and help their communities in this time when we're all supposed to be staying at home and not going out and not having contact. What do you think? A lot of people are looking for things that they can do. Do you have any suggestions?
Absolutely. Look, one of the simple basic things that you can do is to be kind to our fellow neighbors and people in our community. Like, I know we are practicing good social distancing, but know that mental health is a serious issue. People need emotional support and love. So reach out to your friends, reach out to your family. All it takes is a simple phone call or a simple Zoom meeting or GoTo meeting like we're doing here today. I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation with you folks. It's weird. My wife and I, we have 3 young children, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. So our lives completely revolve around babies right now, for the most part. So it's nice to have good adult conversations. So take a moment to provide, some good social time with your friends and family on social media, video, check up on them. Make sure you're there and supportive of them, because this can be very frightening and traumatizing what we're seeing in the world. Of course, people can do simple things at the store. Look, when I still go to the store right now, I'm still seeing a lot of simple essentials wiped out immediately. Let's not rush to wipe things out, because there are folks out there who are very, very vulnerable, who don't have the financial resources and means to get a ton of things. So they buy what they can every time they go to the store. So be cognizant of that. Maintain good health and exercise. The governors encourage that. The counties encourage that. Get out there, go for a walk. We've had some beautiful weather. I know the pollen is starting to creep up as well, because I got some spring allergies myself. But get out there, do some exercise, take good care of yourself. And like we talked about earlier, if you want to change the trajectory of this great state in our country, Cameron earlier talked about the importance of the census. That's a very, very important issue, because making sure we have a proper calculation of the census is going to determine how many resources we get in our state. It's going to determine our representation in Congress in the state. That's why redistricting and gerrymandering is so important to end. And when I mentioned earlier, whichever party holds the pen in 2020 from November after that election will determine the future of our state for the next decade. So figure out how you can get engaged, stay informed, be a good, responsible citizen.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Senator.
Any other questions, Cameron or Mason? Senator, I want to thank you so much again for your time. Obviously, it sounds like you were probably busy at home with 3 kids. But again, on behalf of the LGBTQ Democrats in Mecklenburg County, I want to thank you. Again, I'm Cameron Pruitt, the president. We have Cameron Joyce, our vice president, and Mason Kress, our treasurer. And if you want to have any closing remarks for us, Senator, we're open for them.
Look, I'm just going to continue to say what we said earlier. I know these are scary times, and working together, we're going to get through it. Like I said, support your friends, support your neighbors, check up on your coworkers. These are definitely interesting times, and it's scary. But you know as well as I do, there's no challenge that we can't get past as long as we work together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Folks out there who are concerned about their next job or the next paycheck, hang tight. That assistance is coming. Kids out there right now who, and folks are forgetting, like there's so many children out there who are not used to this, not being able to see their friends and play on the monkey bars. And this is a whole complete new world where they're learning and getting educated on social media and online and other things. So thank them for being patient. It's going to take our whole community to continue to show that love and support. But like I said, we're going to get through this together. So thank you all for listening and joining us today.